Welcome to Practical Research 1. So last time or last week, we discussed about writing or conducting an observation and at the same time interview. So this time we will discuss the module 18 or reporting the findings. Again, when we say findings, these are the answers to our questions, so our problem. And at the same time, when we say findings, this is what we found out after we conducted an interview and the observation. Okay, so again, when we say findings, these are the findings or this is what we found out after conducting an interview or even an observation. Okay, so in this discussion, we have several objectives. First is draw conclusions from patterns and themes, formulate recommendations based on conclusions, list references, present a written research report, finalize and present best design, and write short description and present best design. So again, as I told you a while ago, we will divide this topic into two meetings so that hindi kayo malito. First, we will discuss, or this week, we will discuss 1 and 2 objectives, drawing conclusions and formulating recommendations. Okay? But before that, let's discuss first conclusion. So what do we mean by conclusions? So when we say conclusion class, this is where we wrap up our ideas and we will also give an impression to our readers. So what kind of conclusion or wrap up we will give to our readers? Meaning, this is our summary of overall findings. Okay? So again, when we say conclusion, this is the summary of all our findings, meaning we will summarize it. So after finding out, after conducting an interview, after conducting an observation and also researching using or presenting our related literature and studies, at the end of those findings, we will conclude or we will give conclusions. Okay, so again, when we say conclusion, this is the summary of overall arguments or findings. Okay, so how are we going to draw and verify the conclusion? So we have three ways. Okay, first is memoing. When we say memoing, this happens when a qualitative researchers begin write their initial conclusions and observation. Sometimes after every focus group interview and observational event. These conclusions are initially preliminary, subject to revisions as the project proceeds. Interim analysis may suggest new questions for future interviews and different types of participants to sample. When we say memoing class, this is when we give our conclusions part by part. Or when we are giving observation each after each our observation, and then you will give your conclusions after the interview. Okay, so that is memoing, meaning you will give your initial conclusion. Okay, so in memoing class, this is not the final conclusion. Okay, so again, in memoing, that is just your initial conclusion. So as time goes by, your conclusion through memoing can change. So after finding out some data, you will give another set of conclusion. That is just in memoing. Again, nasa memoing, every part nagbibigay kayo ng conclusion. Next, we have verification. In verification, so after memoing, di ba, after mo, for example, after mo mag-interview, you give conclusions. After that is verification. So it involves checking and rechecking the data to ensure the initial conclusions are realistic, supportable, and valid. Okay, so from Madeline to make sure, yes, to make sure that your initial conclusion is correct or valid. Okay, yes, Patricia, you are double checking the data para ma-verify from Angel. Yes, you are verifying. Yes, okay. So, you are verifying if the conclusion of or if your conclusions in memoing are correct. Yes, Roxy, correct. You are confirming it if it is correct. Okay, verification or confirming or confirmation. Okay, and next is credibility. Okay, so when we say credibility, this is a qualitative researcher's term for trustworthiness and reliability. So it is the degree where of consistency in which the same researcher assigns similar observations and interpretation at different times. So after memoing, so memoing initial conclusion, right? Next is verification. You will verify, you will confirm if your data or your initial conclusions are correct. Next is credibility. So when we say credibility, this is the researcher's trustworthiness and reliability. Yes, Luans, kung kapanipaniwala or there is a credibility kung totoo. Okay? So, for example, I can conducted a research. So, ang next dun is, totoo ba yung research niya? Okay? So, kung copy-paste ba yan? So, that is credibility. Kung totoo ba na siya yung gumawa? Okay? Yes, Mark Angelo, correct. Kung if there is an evidence, okay? Or kung reliable ba? Reliable ba yung, yung research niya? So, for example, let's use our usual never-ending topic, the effects of mobile games to senior high school students. Now, when we say reliable, meaning it should be exact, okay? So, at the same time, it should be believable from Roxy, okay? So, those are the ways when we try drawing and verifying in conclusions, okay? Kung kapanipaniwala ba, okay? Hindi pa puwede yung halimbawa, I conducted a research. Ako lang din yung gumawa ng participants ko, ay kunwari ganito yung sagot nila. Oh, so that is not reliable because the answers are not really came from the participants. Right? Okay? Next is guidelines in writing the conclusions. Okay? So here we have different guidelines in writing the conclusion. So let's discuss them one by one. First, conclusion should be logically written, presenting the valid outgrowths of the findings. So, your conclusion should have inference, deduction, abstractions, implications, interpretation, general statements, and or generalizations based on the findings. Meaning, your conclusion should be about or connected to your findings. Okay? So, again, when we say conclusion, this is your overall findings. Ayun yung isusulat mo, yung mga findings mo. Okay? Next is conclusion should be appropriately answer the specific questions raised at the beginning of the investigation in order they are given under the statements of the problem. Now, your conclusion should answer your statement of the problem. 'Di ba? During the start of your research, you write or you wrote statement of the problem. And also in the statement of the problem, meron tayong general problem and specific problems. So again, your conclusion should answer your statement of the problem, especially the specific questions. Okay? Next is conclusion should point out what were factually learned from the inquiry. However, no conclusion should be drawn from the implied or indirect effects of the findings. So, when we say conclusion, another thing that you need to write in your conclusion is it should be factually learned from the inquiry. Ibig sabihin kung ano lang talaga yung lumabas sa findings mo. Okay? So, kung ano yung sagot nila. For example, our, um, again, topic is about the effects, ha? Now, yung, ano ba yung findings natin? Kunwari, so, for example, our findings is, there are a lot of negative effects in playing mobile games to senior high school students. So that is our conclusion. Meaning it factually learned from the inquiry. So after I conducted an observation and interview, ayun yung nalaman ko. So ayun dapat yung isa sa mga isusulat natin sa conclusions. Okay? Next is conclusion should be formulated concisely, that is, brief and short, yet the study as required by the specific question. So again, it should answer your specific questions in the statement of the problem, and at the same time, it should be formulated concisely. When we say concise, class, be brief and short as possible. Okay? Be direct as possible. So, lagay niyo lang sa conclusion niyo. Yes, summary talaga, Luans. Yes, direct conclusion, Tristan. As in, be direct to the point that my number one conclusion after conducting an interview and observation that most of the students are experiencing anxiety after playing mobile games. Yun lang. That is my number one conclusion. Like, yung example ko kanina, di ba? So, conclusion number one, after conducting an interview, 5 out of 10 students or participants of ACLC Caloocan are experiencing anxiety after playing mobile games. Yun yun, number one. O, next conclusion na. Okay? Next, without any strong evidence to the contrary, conclusion should be stated categorically. They should be worded as if they are 100% correct and true. They should not give any hint that the researcher has some doubts about their validity and reliability. The use of quantifiers such as probably, perhaps, maybe, and the like should be avoided. Here, in this guideline class, when you are stating a conclusion, yes, Tristan, you should sound confident. That you should sound like you are 100% true and correct. Okay? So, when you give your conclusions, dapat, aside from being direct to the point, dapat you might sound confident in your conclusion. Okay? So, wag kayong gagamit ng mga words na probably, 'di ba? So, for example to, ito yung hindi nyo gagamitin na most of the students are maybe experiencing anxiety after playing mobile games. Okay? So, ibig sabihin may doubt kayo. Yes, I can. Okay? So, you should not sound like that. Okay? Kasi sagot mo yan, class. Okay? So, dapat sigurado ka. Yes, Roel. So, why? Kasi class, alam nyo, when you are presenting your research sa panel, pag nagde-defense kayo, dapat hindi niyo ipapakita na kinakabahan kayo, hindi niyo ipapakita na hindi kayo sure. Na, ay, baka, oo nga no, baka hindi lahat experiencing anxiety. Kasi makikita yun ng panelists nyo. And at the same time, your readers will doubt you. Even your doubt your research. Yes, correct, Tristan. Okay? So as much as possible, be 100% true and correct in presenting your research and writing your conclusions. Okay? Next, conclusion should refer only to the population, area, and subject of the study. don't generalize when you are concluding, 'di ba? So, yes, wag lumabas sa topic from Lawrence. And at the same time, it should only refer to the population. So, for example, yes, be specific, Mark Angelo, correct. So, for example, our topic, yung never-ending topic, that effects of mobile games to senior high school students of ACLC Caloocan. Now, my conclusion should only refer to senior high school students of ACLC Caloocan only. Okay? So, hindi ko pa pwedeng sabihin na lahat ng senior high school students sa buong AMA. Kasi they are not my study population. Since my study population only covers ACLC Caloocan, dapat sila lang yun nandun sa conclusion ko. Okay? Next is conclusion should not be repetitions of any statements anywhere in the research. They may be recapitulations or a review if necessary, but they should be worded differently and they should convey the same information as the statement recapitulated or reviewed. Now, here in conclusion, bawal lang maulit. So, sa conclusion kasi class, di ba kapag sinabi natin conclusion, this is the summary of overall arguments and findings. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa pwedeng sa umpisa pa lang sinabi mo na maraming effects ang mobile games. Eh, ayun nga yung conclusion mo, ayun nga yung summary mo. 'Di ba? Paano mo nalaman paano mo nasabi? Oo, 'di ba? Na ayun yung magiging conclusion. So, dapat sa dulo niyo lang siya sasabihin. Okay? It may be a review, but should be worded differently. If you can remember, dun kanina sa memoing, 'di ba, part by part gumagawa kayo ng conclusion. Pwede niyo siyang isama yung conclusions niyo dun, pero yes, once use different term and use different um, words if possible. O kaya naman, you can paraphrase. Okay, so same idea, but in conclusion, iba na. Okay? So, wag mo nang pahalata, Mark Angel, na gagamit ka ng synonym. So, you can use paraphrasing. Okay? Kasi nga yung conclusion, dapat nasa dulo siya. Eh, paano mo nabanggit na dun sa umpisa na ayun yung magiging conclusion mo? Di ba? So, kung gusto mong gamitin yung previous information or data mo, you can but use different terms or you can use paraphrasing. Okay? So, those are the guidelines in writing conclusions. So, after conclusions, next is writing recommendations. Okay? So, after giving your conclusions, the next step is writing recommendation. Recommendation class will based on the conclusion. So, kung ano yung conclusion nyo, doon kayo magbe-base ng ilalagay nyong recommendation. So, from the word itself, when we say recommendation, meaning you will recommend your research and at the same time, you will recommend some data from your research. The recommendation is not just recommendation that your readers should read your research, but at the same time, you need to indicate or to give specific measures or actions that needs to be taken in your research. So after researching, you presented the findings in your conclusions, di ba? So since you have the conclusion, you have the findings, the next step is to give recommendation based on this. So ano ba yung mga na-find out mo sa conclusion? And ano ba yung mga dapat gawin or yung mga actions that need to be taken? And that is recommendations. Yes, Tristan. So your findings should be connected to your recommendation kasi magbe-based kayo ng recommendation sa conclusion. Okay, so first is recommendation should not aim to solve or help solve problems discovered in the investigation. We will just give some recommendation, okay? Not the solution itself. Kasi 'di ba meron na tayong na bigay na solution. So it's up to the um to your readers if they want to follow your recommendations or not. Next is, no recommendations should be made for a problem or anything for that matter that has not been discovered or discussed in the study. So, recommendation for things not discussed in the study are irrelevant, meaning your recommendation should only based on the conclusion or your findings. Okay? Kung ano lang yung na-discover nyo or na-discuss nyo sa study, ayun lang yung ibibigay nyo sa recommendations. So, for example, yung about our topic, effects of mobile games. Kung hindi nyo siya na-discuss dun sa study nyo, huwag nyo siyang ibibigay as recommendations. Okay? So, for example, hindi niyo naman na-discuss na one of the negative effects is yung anxiety, for example ha. So, wag niyo siyang i-recommend. Kasi hindi niyo naman siya na-discuss sa study nyo. Okay? So, ayan na, for things not discussed in the study are irrelevant or not important. Next, there may be also recommendations for the continuance of a good practice or system, or even recommendation for its improvement. This is to ensure a continuous benefit being accorded to the universe involved. Now, we can also recommend your research for the continuance, meaning you can include in your recommendation na pwedeng gamitin yung research nyo as reference. Pwede nyo rin ilagay sa recommendations that you can use your research or the other researchers can use your research for the improvement. Okay? So, pwede nilang gamitin yun if kung may nabasa sila na need ng improvement sa research nyo, they can use your research. You can recommend your research para ma-improve. Okay? Next is, recommendations should aim for the ideals but they must be feasible. When we say feasible, pwedeng pag-aralan, practical and attainable. It is useless to recommend the impossible. Okay? So, baka naman, wag nyo ilalagay sa recommendation nyo na since there are a lot of negative effects, mobile games should be taken down. Oh, hindi hindi yun, imposible yun class. It is not possible. 'Di ba? So there are a lot of mobile games and gusto mong ipa-take down lahat. 'Di ba? So that is not feasible and at the same time, it is not attainable. Yes, I can. Yung mga kayang gawin lang. Okay? So ano ba yung mga pwedeng gawin? For example, guidance ng parents o your research or as a researcher, you are recommending the parents to be mindful and to watch their children when playing mobile games. Yun lang. O kaya naman, you can recommend some intervention like physical activities or playing physical sports in your research. Yun lang. Okay, yung pwedeng gawin. Okay, yung posible. Next is, recommendation should be logical and valid. Again, so yung dapat yung totoo. Recommendation should be addressed to the persons, entities, agencies, or offices who or which are in a position to implement them. Meaning, when writing recommendations, it should be addressed dun sa set of people na makakagawa lang nun. So, for example, our topic, effects of mobile games to senior high school students, di ba? So, sino yung mga pwede mong bigyan ng recommendation? So, for example, you can give recommendation to the students itself. Okay? It should be addressed. Since they are in the position, so yung mga students lang makakatulong sa sarili nila, so you can recommend that. Aside from that, you can recommend it to the parents kasi they are in the position para bantayan yung anak nila. Hindi mo puwedeng ilagay sa recommendation mo na, it is recommended to, senior high school students' neighbors, nabantayan, 'di ba? So, they are not in the position, baka pabantayan mo sa kapitbahay, oh, 'di ba? So, see to it that it should be addressed in a correct position or to the set of people that can implement them. Yes, Jong, you need to be specific. Sino yun? Kanino mo siya nire-recommend? Yung recommendation mo. You have to be specific, di ba? So, for example, nire-recommend mo sa mga students, nire-recommend mo siya sa parents. So, you are being specific. Yes, there should be a recommendation for further research on the same topic in other places to verify, amplify, or negate the findings of the study. This is necessary so that the findings, if the findings are the same, generalizations of wider applications can be formulated. Meaning, you can also recommend your research to use as as um, as supporting documents. So if other researchers want to make a research like your research, they can use your findings as their literature. Yes, to give them an idea, Jong, and yes, I can. It is also a stepping stone para makagawa ng or makapag-conduct ng research yung ibang tao. And at the same time, if the topic is the same or same topic, so they can verify. So for example, my findings in my research, di ba ang research ko is um, effects of mobile games to senior high school students of ACLC Caloocan. ACLC Caloocan lang siya. So, for example, si Harold na taga St. Augustine Las Piñas, pag nag-conduct siya ng same study, we can verify kung ano yung findings. Na parehas ba kami ng findings sa school? Another example is our classmate from AMA Batangas. So si Darling, gagawa rin siya ng same topic and we can collaborate. 'Di ba? So we can verify if my findings are the same or not. Okay? So those are some ways to give recommendations based on conclusion. Okay? So again, when we say conclusion, it is the summary of our findings, the overall arguments. And when we say recommendation, it is based on our conclusion. From the word itself, how are we going to recommend or what are the things that we can recommend in our readers?